What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mac here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mac. Through this podcast, I'm on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters, both new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. This podcast is also proudly brought to you by Onyx Hunt. When I first got into hunting, I kept hearing all about public land and different access and how to find different locations to hunt. I was like, well, how are people even identifying all this stuff? Well, sure enough, I came across the number one hunting GPS app, and that is Onyx Hunt. If you guys want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, Onyx Hunt is the number one GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust Onyx Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. It was a game changer for me, and I know it's going to be a game changer for you if you've never used it. If you have used it, you know the power that it holds. Guys, I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you want to know more about Onyx, go to onyxmaps.com/hunt and check out their app. Be blessed, freedom on, and stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mac, and today I am joined by two brothers of a special company out of the state of Illinois who are all about treading heavy. And that treading heavy has to do with your connection with the earth and everything that goes from your back to your feet to the ground. And that is Stephen and James Lathrop of Lathrop and Sons Boot Company. And we are here because I've always been somebody who's had a big difficulty with my feet. I'm an athlete. I run. I am always getting giant strawberries and giant blisters. I've gone through multiple boots over the years until I finally found a pair that has a lot of flexion, and maybe that has a lot to do with not a lot of support. We're going to dive into that topic today as we talk with Stephen and James from the Lathrop and Sons Boot Company. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing?
We're doing good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us, Johnny.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, so here we are. I've been hunting. You guys are big hunters. You've been, we're in this world of comfort. The number one thing that hunters need in order for success, besides their weapon, is boots. Because if your feet are in pain, you're probably going to be cutting your hunt short more often than not. I've gone through a lot of different boot brands and nothing has worked for me, and I've struggled a lot of times. I recently came across your guys' boot company from a friend of mine, Hatchet Jane, Hannah, who is an amazing human being. And she was like, "Have you ever heard of Lathrop and Sons?" And I was like, "No, tell me more." And so as I browsed your website and started to learn a little bit about what you guys do, I was really fascinated. So what's the history of Lathrop and Sons?
Go ahead, James.
Well, Lathrop and Sons is a company that was developed really through years of working in a podiatry practice. Our father still practices podiatry today. They turned 80 this year. My brother and I both started working in the office when we were about 14 years of age. And I realize that sounds kind of young, but you can bring patients back in the office, sweep up toenails, things of that nature. And we just kind of went from there. As we worked in the office, we developed more and more skills. We ended up going to school to become what you call a podorthist, which is the individual that fits orthopedic shoes, fills prescriptions for orthopedic shoes, and manufactures those types of appliances to remedy problems that these patients might have. Over the years of doing that and working in the practice, we just started kind of tweaking a little bit with our own hunting boots and, seeing what materials work well with this and work well with that. And was encouraged by a good friend of ours in the stick bow community that we probably ought to try to do something, that there was a business here. And, after kind of sitting around and talking about it, we finally decided, what, let's go ahead and do it. Maybe we can pay for a hunt or two. And we started that, put two different systems together, went to a show, and made enough money to go ahead and we paid for the trip, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really, Lathrop and Sons continued on. For years and years after that, we still worked in our office, doing our own thing while we were building our business and building our process. And this is where we're at today. We just moved in a brand new facility, and we're all about making that fit as perfect as possible. That's what our goal is when we take care of our people.
I love that. I love that. Now, Stephen, when you and I, we spoke on the phone, and one of the cool things is about your company is that when someone calls to ask questions about boots, they're not talking with a service representative or anything. They're either talking to you or James, which is super personal and really ups the experience. But I was telling you about my experience with boots and how I really need something that allows my foot to flex a whole lot. And you were like, well, that's probably because your boots aren't fitting right. So is everything built around the orthotic or the sole, or is it the structure? What is different? What sets you guys apart and your boots apart? And how is it that you go about fitting people for their shoes?
Sure. So, and I talked to a lot of people, but I do remember some of this. And, when James was explaining how we got to where we're at here, when you're fitting people, he referred to it as appliances. It was foot orthotics, from dealing with people with a 4-foot amputation to someone with heel spurs, arch pain, athletes that have running and training shoes. When you're dealing with someone in a clinical environment, making that orthotic, fitting the shoe, matching the two up, and you do that for 20 plus years, you start to develop a pattern or some similarities from one condition, from one shoe to one orthotic, from one person to the next. And our fathers trained us well. believe it or not, we start with identifying a foot type. And once you identified that foot type and you look at a photo of their feet and you look at the peak pressures, you really start to understand the foundation. You understand what needs to be built into it. So to answer your question, yes, it is the way that I personally approach it. And James might have a little different way that his mind works when he's fitting someone, but it's identify the foot type, identify the shape, identify, yes, length and width. That's rather elementary in the grand scheme of things. I've got to be honest with you. Identify the foundation. The foundation is just like a home. You've got to have, do you want this rigid platform? Do you want a softer platform? And I think what I was explaining to you was that you're finding a softer platform for your foot type more comfortable because of the deformity of your foot, meaning the bump on the back of the heel or the tightness in the Achilles tendon. And what happens is if you've got the back of the heel here and the foot is twisting under load or side heeling, the prominent area, the back of the heel, is actually going into motion, and that prominent area, therefore, in a rigid boot, the boot isn't flexing as much, but the foot is. So when your foot's flexing, you're just pounding that into the back of that stiff counter. It's natural. You're going to go find what feels comfortable, and clinically, what you did for yourself isn't necessarily wrong. You found a softer, more flexible shoe that was kind of there, but really wasn't going to assist you with the rest of your body. So what you did is you got a foot that's flexing all over the place. You put a shoe on that will flex with that. You solved your blistering, or you helped stop some of that. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's not what I would do for somebody that was packing weight. So, my mindset is I look at that foot, I identify the foundation, I listen to what that person's telling me is going on. Like I listened to you when we originally talked. I listen to what your preconceived ideas, what you have come up with as a customer, or a friend or a buddy. Hey man, what's going on? Dude, I got to ask you this question. My foot is freaking killing me. What do you think I'm doing? Well, naturally, you've got a preconceived idea of what you think is going to work. You talk to a guy that's dealt with thousands of people, and you're shutting these problems down. That's kind of how I approach it.
I love it. That's a really good layout. One of the things that you mentioned to me and what you just mentioned earlier is talking about the shape of your heel, the tightness of your Achilles tendons. Can you take us through or James, maybe one of you, take us through the differences in people's feet, because it's not a one size fits all. It's not, we're not big box stores of, here's your size, military, here you go out there and go conquer. People have different arches, they have different heel shapes, their flexibility in their calves is different, and all that affects to their gait and how they are moving in their shoe and on the mountain.
Right. So it's very common to hear people say low volume. Well, I guess we refer to it as low volume, mid volume, high volume foot. What's a low volume? Low volume foot can actually be a wider foot. It's just lower volume. But we'll break it down for simplicity. High volume foot's wide, mid volume's a medium, low volume, we're going to call it a narrow width, right? Let's just simplify it. But here's the problem. You can have a wide foot, and this guy or gal will sit on the phone and say, my foot's narrow. We always ask these questions. What do you think your foot is? Well, I think I've got a narrow foot because every time I put shoes on and I lace them up, the eyelets are coming together. Well, why are your toes hurting you then? Identifying this foot type. Their arch is collapsing to the floor, right? Or they're collapsing to the ground. When that arch collapses to the ground, there's a dimension of that shoe now that is not making contact with the laces, right? Think about this. If you look at a side view of your foot, visualize it. A side view of your foot in a perfect world, the boot last is shaped that way. But if you put that foot in there. If your foot flattens, now you've got to suck all that material down. So you're getting a false negative. It's telling you got a narrow foot, but the reality is you got a flat arch and a wide forefoot. So there's several variables that you've got to identify. And the same can be true with somebody that's got a relatively high instep, wider forefoot, but they've got no meat on their foot at all. And they'll tell you, God, I got a real narrow foot. I got a real narrow foot. They don't have a real narrow foot. They've got a Skeletor foot. They've got no fat on it, no meat. Oh, seriously, if you looked at some of these, the craziest one James brought in, and we were having been having to do a lot of these meetings. We were not able to travel over into Italy right now, just simply because of all this COVID stuff. Don't know when we will be able to. So we're doing a lot of this on WhatsApp and Zoom calls. And James came in that one day and he had a mapping kit held up and it was a 19 US. It's going to be special made. And you talk about wild looking. Size 19. Oh, it was 100. It was a snow ski. I mean,
but he also had a position of hallux varus with his big toe too, which means it cranked all the way in the opposite direction.
So it's like looked like a boomerang. I mean, like I'm serious. This thing went, and it was 19.
But to what Stephen was also saying, when you're looking at these foot types, it really makes a huge difference. You have people with more of an inflared type of toe box, and you have other people with more of a straighter lasted type of foot. Understanding that no two boots are made or shaped exactly the same, you have to identify and pair up that foot to the correct last. A lot of people might say, in this particular boot over here, that's more of an inflared type of toe box, that their lesser toes, their fourth or fifth toes, for some reason, even though they have the right length and they feel like they've got the right width, those lesser toes get banged up really bad. And their conclusion is, well, it's too narrow of a boot for me. The fact is, oftentimes when you get a chance to evaluate it, you can simply see, no, they really got more of a standardized shaped foot. It's a straighter lasted foot. If you get them in the appropriate boot, then that all goes away. So there's a lot of dimensions to looking at the foot, evaluating that. To Stephen's point with the heel blistering on the back of somebody's foot, how that heel is twisting inside of a boot. Because we have 30 plus years working with the foot and ankle and 20 years, 19, 20 years doing what we're doing here, we recognize that, as soon as you see that, you think, probably got a lot of tightness in the back of the leg. Look, he's got a cavus type of foot. So you're going to start thinking about a boot that's probably going to have a little bit more of a heel height on there, because that's going to allow them to get through that gait cycle quicker without causing that heel to twist so much. So it's going to go straight up and down. And the boot and the foot and the leg are biomechanically sound at that point in time.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, go ahead, James. Or Steven, sorry.
A cavus foot's a high arch.
Yeah,
I'm trying to dumb it down because sometimes we...
the scientific talk.
When your brain is stuck in that mode for all these years, it's hard to do.
Your listeners can understand what we're saying.
Okay, so here is, I bought a boot that I really loved because it was flexible and it didn't give me blisters on my heels. What I noticed, though, is that I had to replace the insoles right away after probably a year and a half of use and pack out, because now my feet were starting to hurt after maybe an hour or two in the shoe, but not my feet, but like the soles of my feet. And then what I noticed is 2 years after wearing my boots, on pack outs, when I'm going downhill, the fronts of my toes are just getting destroyed on pack outs. And it's like, okay, what do I want to have? No blisters on my heels, room for my toes, a comfortable bed for my feet to not hurt when I'm just standing and walking and moving about on rocks and scree. Can you guys conquer it all? Or is it more, this is a problem with other boot companies when people don't have the knowledge?
No, I believe that we can. And he and I have talked about this. We really have dialed in our process, our intake forms, our questioning. If a person goes through a custom boot system, that's like super involved, but we've got that dialed in. And what we've done to even our standalone retail boot, that someone would just come and buy a retail boot from us, we have integrated a lot of really nice features. So that helped to mitigate a lot of these problems that you're experiencing. But it seems like to James and I, with the exception of some of the certified brands, and certified brands are brands within the Lathrop and Sons canopy that we have had experience fitting and had good results with. I didn't say every shoe that they have in their lineup is a rock star, but we've had good experiences. If we cannot get someone into our boot, or our boot's not a good fit, there are other options. But I would say there's a multitude of reasons why you would experience all these scenarios. And that is why talking about the last and the dimensions and the forefoot, the rear foot, the height of your arch, the tightness, all of that has a bearing on every item that you brought up. From your toes hitting the end is the reason that your toes are hitting the end. If it was as simplistic as this, your toes are hitting the end, so buy the shoe longer. So you go and you buy the shoe longer. Guess what? Now your heel's pistoning up and down inside the boot. Now the heel's pistoning up and down, but my toes aren't hurting, but now I'm getting even blisters from my heel pistoning up and down. And now I'm getting even more shear force of pressure into the balls of my feet. Even more, because now I've got way too much volume here. What is the answer to it? And it is tricky. It is relinquishing control and letting a professional in the footwear realm that really understands the biomechanics and the components that are integrated into the footwear. And I will tell you right now, the padding that we integrate into our boots, the last that we create, the uppers and the designs, all of those features tie into resolving that. And probably the number one upgrade that a person can put into a boot is to utilize not a rigid arch support or a hard plastic orthotic, but to develop a concept that's been in the podiatry and orthopedic for years, which is let the foundation support the foot. Think about this. Let the boot do its job. It should be providing you that torsional stability, and then interface a soft tissue supplemental orthotic like we manufacture to create a total contact environment around your foot to help neutralize those pressures. So now you got the benefit of everything working. If you've got a boot that's got the right rock and roll to it, meaning propelling you off the top. In a side heeling situation, you're not allowing your foot to twist and flex in it. That's stopping the motion. So that's really how you got to do it.
And so with you guys, what you developed and provided for your consumer is someone doesn't just call and be like, hey, I'd like to order a size 12. Or you go through a 3D foot mapping program?
That's more of the custom side. And we have a lot of luck doing that for people. And I would say the people that come to us for a custom boot fitting have got a closet full of mountain hunting boots. They've wrecked their hunts, destroyed their feet on hunts, or they've never been on a backcountry hunt, which is really cool because we're dealing with a lot of middle-aged men and women that have never hunted in their lives. And this is a really cool deal. This guy called me, it's been a 3 weeks ago, and his comment to me was, and I thought this was super cool, I'm getting into hunting. So really, how old are you? He was in his 40s. My son's getting older, and I remember my dad taking me hunting, and I always enjoyed that. And I think if I at least do this and I expose him to it, maybe he'll have a moment like I'm having at 40 years old. But there's more to this thing than just sitting around. And I thought that was really cool. So there's a group of people that like that will go through the custom boot fitting process. But yes, we do have people that don't have a unique need that can get away with just buying a pair of boots off the shelf. But we like to say, or boots in a box, but we like to say at Lathrop and Sons, professional boots, professional fit, but we've got something for everyone. If you want to buy a retail boot off the shelf, we can assist you, but I assure you it's not going to be, tell me your size, I'll drop it in a box. It's going to be, tell me your size. What have you worn in the past? Are you sure that's the size? Because we don't want you to be upset because you got a boot in a box and now it doesn't fit. You got a set of boots. You want to upgrade the footbed. We've got a standard footbed we can put in your existing boots if you're happy with them. We also manufacture a Synergy orthotic new for 2022 this year for guys that have got a killer fitting pair of mountain boots that they've hunted a season in and never had one problem, but they just want to upgrade that fit and do an orthotic. I mean, for 80 or 90 bucks, they can have a freaking custom, go through the mapping kit, get an orthotic made for that boot. And they've still got a chart that if they want to come back at a later date and roll it into a boot, they can do that. So, I mean, we have got everything for everyone.
That is awesome. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about my feet right here. And listeners, if you guys get grossed out by feet, then this might not be the podcast for you, but we're
really, no, listen, Johnny, if they're really that gnarly, I've got to pass this off to James because he loves that stuff.
Yeah, all you listeners out there, we're doing a video call, and I feel like I'm gonna have to like lift my feet up on camera and be like, "Hey, check this sucker out."
Shorts on. What's the temperature there today?
Oh man, well, I'm a PE teacher, man. I'm in my work attire. All right, so here's what I got. I wear a size 12 tennis shoe. My boots, they recommended, and I went with crispy Laponias for in case the listeners are like, well, what boots did you actually find that worked for you? And they say half size down, so I bought 11.5 crispy Laponia. I have mad bunions to the point where I need to have foot surgery. On my right foot, my big toe, when I bend my toes, my big toes cross over my second toe.
Wow.
Right.
Yep. And not good. It's way worse on my right foot than my left. And my second toe is longer than my big toe. I have what I would consider a high arch. I wouldn't say extremely high. When my feet are wet and I walk on cement, I see what my arch looks like. And I know that my calves are very tight. And I'm always having to stretch them out after runs, before runs. I've been prone to calf cramping in the past when I played sports, and I think that's because I'm always up on my toes. So I
got a question real quick.
You're going to get interrogated.
So you've always worn a 12. They suggested to bump down to 11.5. You've got a bunion on your foot. What's your heel to ball measurement?
Did they give you that?
No, they did not.
Okay, and then the next question that I would have is, in sizing your foot, are you going off of the amount of room from the end of your longest toe to the end of the boot? The space there at the front? Distance. Is that what you're doing?
Most people do. I mean, most people do.
A lot of people do, but that can bite you in the rear end sometimes.
Remember a bunion, that toe's twisted over there, but if you pull that toe and straighten it out, your joint's where your foot flexes.
So, not to interrupt, let me just go with my thought. I had a guy, super nice guy. He come up from Southern Illinois. His question to me was, can you accommodate for an 8.5 foot with a 6E width with a bad bunion? And I said, well, we've done a lot, and what I can offer you is let's do the mapping kit. Let me look at it, and we're going to give you the honest answer. Can we move forward or not? because I don't have any idea. He's telling me what size foot he has. It was actually kind of neat. He was close enough. He wanted to drive up here, so I met him on a Saturday. So this is what we found out in this meeting. I grabbed an 8.5 2E boot, pulled the insole out, set it down on the ground, and allowed him to press his foot down on top of it. The first thing that took place for him was, or what I could see was, he was going off of how much room he had from the end of his toe to the end of that insole or the end of that boot. But it was evident right at the very beginning, looking at it, the position of his first metatarsal head was actually way out of the valley of the toe spring. So it was up on the rise, which means this heel to ball measurement wasn't even remotely close. He was used to wearing boots that were softer, so they gave, and it was okay to do that. But now we're going into more of a functional type of brace. Backpacking boots generally are. And as we started putting him into a longer boot, the bunion pressure decreased, and the ability to walk in that stiffer shank was so much nicer and easier for him. So just starting off with this, a lot of people will say, this is the size I am, and this is how I'm doing it. But the heel to ball measurement is so important in a stiff shank boot, because if that heel or that ball, that foot's not resting in that valley, then you are losing a lot of that ability to function inside that boot. Doesn't really matter how much room per se you got up at the front, but to expect something to fit properly, the position of that foot has to be in there. And you have to go with that size. A tennis shoe that you're wearing it for work versus a mountaineering boot, two totally different concepts there. And they have to be fit differently.
Interesting. Okay, so when I told you a lot about my foot,
right,
and one of the huge things is people that have bunions. My athletic shoes are all mesh, right? Because
right.
it allows me to put my foot in that shoe and feel comfortable. All these mountaineering boots they're leather, right? They're stiff. So how do you accommodate for people that have bunions, and how does that work?
Well, part of it is what I just said here. In a custom boot package, you're evaluating the foot for these measurements. You're looking for the placement of where that bunion is. So, and you're going off of the size for that. I can't tell you how many times I've gone through these packages, these consults, and a guy's a size and a half off.
Oh,
it's hard for them to understand that because they've been wearing a tennis shoe all these years and it feels fine for them. And by the way, they get really nervy when you talk about a size and a half, because you're increasing 3/8 of an inch there.
Yeah.
Right? Each half size, people, is basically 1/8 of an inch.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you're saying a size and a half off, you're saying people are wearing shoes that are too small, or boots that are too small for them?
Or most of them are too small, but yeah. So you really have to, you got to get that heel to ball measurement lined out properly. Then, and obviously selecting of the last is important, selecting of the width, selecting of the volume up and down inside that boot. That's taking all of those into account, that's going to drop you into a particular boot. Whether it's a mountain hunter, whether it's a Tibet, whatever it is, it's going to drop in one of those categories. And from that point, we have that foundation. Now we start thinking about the orthotic going inside there. A lot of these traditional orthotics that people are making, a lot of times they're real thick. They don't want to sit down inside of that boot real well. The type of orthotic we pair with our boots, they actually lay down in there. They can't overcorrect the foot. They can't ride up and down on one side or the other, causing issues with the waterproof membrane and whatnot. But that goes inside there. Then, on those really severe cases like this one gentleman I was talking about, we have some tooling back here that you can actually modify that. You warm that up, modify it, and literally have created a pocket for that said bunion.
Mm.
So you're
Really?
altering the shape of it. And there's some other tricks of the trade that we've come up with
It's
over
a
the
lot
years.
of it.
But you can make a fitting of a very aggressive bunion, a really bad juicy bunion. You can change the overall shape of that. And people, you guys have to understand, there are some limitations with everything. I'm not going to sit here and say everything is going to be 110%. Life isn't that way. But in these really tough cases like this, you can get really close to 95, 96, 98%. And if you've got that much improvement out of it, hey, that's a winner.
Yeah, considering the guy is having to tape his feet at 3 a.m. every time on a hunt that he's paid and waited years to go on, and you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I mean, he's like thinking you're just walking on water because he has spent thousands on boots and own stock in this Luco tape company or whatever because he's taping his feet every freaking day.
I tape my heels every morning on my hunts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How nice would it be not to have to do it?
Tremendous. It would be so nice.
Blister free. That should be our new hashtag. Tread heavy, blister free.
That's right. I love it. Okay, so here's a question that I'm sure a lot of people want to know and have. How do you know if your foot's a wide foot or not? Because a lot of times with people with bunions, they're like, oh, I need to buy a wide shoe because I don't want my knuckles to rub on the outsides of the boot.
It's again, it falls back. This is why this stuff is so tricky, man. You're getting this figured out because you're asking these questions, because you can have a tapered foot, right? A standardized looking foot. You already said you got a second toe that's longer, which is called a Morton's toe. I had the same thing.
A lot of people.
If you took an outline of your foot and you basically took that deformity or that joint where it's protruding out, you basically whited it out where it wasn't there, and you looked at the shape of the foot, probably very normal looking, right?
Right.
When I say you know that you're going to need a wide width is when you have got the Fred Flintstone look, like all your toes are the same length as a box, right? Like really boxy, or a real high cavus arch. I mean, these are foot types. So you think foot types. Well, how are these listeners going to know foot types? They're not, because they didn't spend 20 some years understanding foot type. Who is going to dedicate just a year of research and still only grasp 2% of it and try to apply it to fitting a shoe? Call the guys that have.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, if I was going to classify how do you know if you've got a wide foot or a narrow foot, well, I think James could agree with this. You put the shoe on and you look down at your foot. If it looks like you're blowing the upper of a tennis shoe off the sole, if you're prematurely wearing through the upper where your fifth and your fourth toe are, if you're noticing things like that, maybe a little numbness or tingling in the toes, consistently finding yourself buying the shoes longer and longer to accommodate your foot, you're falling into that wider category. Low volume foot, narrow foot, like we were talking about earlier in the cast, eyelets coming together, a lot of excess material. Wow, the shoe that I bought online that looked great on the model and displayed in the stock photo looks terrible on my foot. There's wrinkling in the upper, there's wrinkling in the material, and it's an overfit, right? Overfit, underfit, overfit, underfit, you know, a wide foot too is underfit. You can't get the eyelets to even come in. It looks like you're in a sardine can. You're blowing the tongue out of the chutes. You barely got any laces to tie it. You know?
Yeah.
Those are good triggers.
It's so interesting. Okay, so one of the hacks that people always, hey, my boots are hurting. Well, go to Google. What are some ways to make my boots feel better? And people talk about how they lace their boots and that being this big hack on, well, now your heels aren't going to, you tie it this way and you'll lock your heel in or all this stuff. Do you guys buy the hype? Do you believe the hype?
I don't. I'm sorry. I heard enough of it, and I'll let James get pitches. This is really important you're bringing this up because I'm going to be straight up with you. I would say the first 5 years that James and I were in business doing that, I was talking to the experts, not YouTube experts. I mean, real boot manufacturing people. They couldn't give me any answers. And these were the guys that should be giving me the answers, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think this is my stand. I don't honestly believe that it holds the weight. And if the foundation's right, the fit's right, it's unnecessary, okay?
I would agree with that.
But I would say this. If there was one foot type that it does work for, it is someone with a very high instep, cavus foot. Cave, meaning you can see inside that. If you looked at the arch side of the foot, you would see a cave, big hole there. Now, I'm going to tell you something. There is a bundle of nerves that run right down from the ankle right across the top of the arch. And in a lot of this technical footwear, we really tried to offload this area with our footwear by creating independent tabs that as they were laced, they would accommodate to the top of the foot. Even in those instances, sometimes it doesn't. And in technical footwear, you're lacing the boot tighter for coming downhill or uphill. I don't necessarily call that a specialized lacing technique. I think anyone and everyone should consciously relace their boots when they're going up or coming down, right? Accordingly. But you can over tighten a boot that's built like ours, and you can entrap that nerve, that bundle of nerves, and you'll start getting some numbness and tingling. So doing something as simple as lacing around the top of the foot, creating a little square or a little window with your lacing can really help somebody like that. That is valid.
So is that like where you're skipping eyelets?
Yeah.
You're just like...
You basically, you know how you go crisscross. Well, when you get right there, don't crisscross again. Just drop and go straight up and then crisscross.
Interesting.
So you go up and across. And it takes the pressure off of it. It accommodates. It makes a little soft window for somebody. And you still have that lower portion set the way you like and above it set the way you like. That would be really...
That helps a lot in a situation like that with the nerves there.
Right? But as far as locking in a heel,
everybody else, as far as I'm concerned, my philosophy is this. There is a point to where you try to get too technical with the lacing system, you can actually cause more of an injury or greater pressure to the back of the heel and cause problems. A lot of people lace their boot up because they don't want their foot to move. Well, if you've got kind of a Hageland's deformity or some sort of a posterior spurring on the back or irregularity to the back of the heel,
like yours,
okay,
you're trying to jam your heel into that. So the heel counter is made a certain way. Your heel isn't exactly that same shape. So now you've created a focal point that's driving into the back of that heel counter even more, which causes more peak pressure. There is something to be said, definitely making sure you've got a good sock around your foot for some of that protection, and then allow for just a little bit of motion. Not a bunch, but a little bit of a give. That will help reduce the peak pressure because, as we all know, the more the pressure when it does move, and quite honestly, guys, it's very, very hard to keep a heel from moving. And if it's not the right move, you don't have the right level of heel height and the biomechanics in it, you're not going to ever keep it 100% in there. So the more pressure you have on there, the more it's going to grind in there, and it's going to cause it to heat up even faster. So my solution, or what I feel like I said, everybody's different. Snug, lock down the dorsal surface, the lower section of the foot with a good boot. Allow for some extra motion in the ankle. So lace it up accordingly to that, whether you take your knee, move that knee forward just a little bit before you do your crisscrossing, and tie it up at the top. Everybody is different. You don't want to crank it down too tight. The foot does need to go ahead and be able to have that circulation going through there. And like as Stephen said, in a lot of these boots, particularly ours, the structure of that upper is such that it's not going to necessarily give or stretch out the way others would. And people lace their boots in anticipation of things giving. When it doesn't give, it's going to hurt. It's going to start to ache. So when it boils down to it, everybody has their own system. And all these techniques that are out there, it might work for one person. It may not be for another person.
You know, you're talking my experiences right there, because I've been the guy who's like, all right, maybe if I just cinch my boots down so my foot doesn't move, I'll be good on my heels, but then the bridge of my foot is just killing me.
Yeah.
Or hey, maybe I'm going to need to try more socks, because if I pad the heel of my foot a lot more, then my blisters aren't going to hurt, but then my toes and my bunions are just dying, and it's just a struggle fest, and maybe I'm stretching out my boots in an unnatural shape to my foot then, and that's not good. So it's really interesting hearing you guys go through this process. Now, I got a lot of questions for you, and specifically about your boots. One of them being, and so I'm a runner. I have been running in a 0-drop shoe. However, I've been finding, so I see your facial response right there. I've been finding that my shoe, I think, doesn't fit my foot very well. I decided to just go to some work shoes, my Nikes, that are not meant for like full on running, but they have more of a drop in from the heel to the toe, and all of a sudden I got knee pain. So when it comes to hunting boots, can you address the whole idea of like heel drop, toe drop, all that, and why that's even important?
Well, you want me to do it, or you want to?
Well, you can go ahead and do it if you want.
This again, James and
running and hiking are two different
right?
things.
Yeah, but the concept that James and I have developed is the importance of. And there's going to be some guys out there going to go, I don't know about it. I run it. Well, your body's just made to do that. But 90% of the people that I deal with, their body is not built to be wearing a shoe with a negative heel. Okay. Negative heel, meaning your forefoot's sitting there and your heel's sitting back on your haunches. It really causes a lot of problems. It'll cause problems in the Achilles tendon, the calf, and it will actually cause instability in the midfoot. And if you watch very many people trying to run or even walk or exercise in a negative heeled shoe like that, you'll watch them caving their arches in. If you look at them walk from the back view as they're going ahead in front of you, you're going to see their feet going like this. They're just in. The whole shoe's just caving in. I got a pair of the, what are those? The Brooks Caldera.
That's what I run in.
I love Brooks, but the problem with it is it's got just a little bit. It just doesn't have enough. And then I bought a pair of the Hocus shoes. And I liked what they looked like. I heard a lot of customers, and this one wasn't supposed to have as much of this heel drop. And I put it in, and when I walk in it, it is low enough that statically walking around in our facility here, I feel like I'm walking on my midfoot. And that's your arch. It's not normal to walk on your midfoot. And everyone's going to say, the whole concept with that shoe is they take away the heel height that forces you to run on the toe. Well, that's not going to happen for a lot of people. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. And therefore, they're going to end up ripping their plantar fascia band. dislocating the midfoot, straining ligaments, getting Achilles tendonitis. There's one analogy that should strike home for everybody, and especially you being a coach. If you had your star athletes for the track meet, and you guys flipped a coin with 4 or 5 teams there, who was going to get one of the starting blocks to race? Would you want that starting block for your runner? You would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who's going to shoot out of the gate faster? The guy in the starting block or the guy sitting there flat-footed?
The guy who's on the balls of his feet, ready to rock and roll.
Why? Because you basically have put him in a situation where he's ready to rocket ship off the ball of his foot. So our philosophy is keep it simple, stupid. You're not putting someone in high-heeled shoes. You're increasing the heel height, which tilts the hips, which gets your center fulcrum to where you really barely unlock your knee and you roll off the front of your foot. Unlock the knee, you roll off the front of your foot. Now, if you're mountain hunting and you're climbing, you're on the ball of the foot. If you're walking down a flat trail, to be as efficient as possible, the more heel height, the less pressure your foot is, or the less work your foot's having to go through to get through the range of gait, right? The flatter the sole, the shoe, the slower out of the gate, the more energy it requires to get you going. And it's just not as efficient. And that is what we have built into our own line of boots. And that is what we seek in other footwear. And a matter of fact, you were talking about, you had some of your old Nikes and they're really more your work shoes, but you found yourself using those, and maybe I was wrong. They were more comfortable for you to do that, or you felt better in them. I've got a pair of Air Max 90s that I had built, and I wore to trade shows with a pair of Synergy footbeds, and those son of the bitches are still going strong. I wear them every day, almost every other day in this office. And there's nights when I'll come home from work, and I will actually, if it's raining out, I'll jump on the treadmill on those, crank the incline up, and I'll wear them. And I mean, I'm solid in them. They just protect me. They protect me.
It's so interesting you talk about Air Max 90. So before I was a hunter, so this Soulful Hunter podcast is, I'm 30. I turned 38 next month. I started hunting when I was 30. So I've only been doing this for a few years. But before that, I was a backpacker, and I did the Wonderland Trail, which circumferences Mount Rainier, 98 miles around Mount Rainier in Air Max 90s. Because I could never find a boot that was comfortable, so I always wore shoes that I was comfortable in. And you just spoke to it right there. It's very interesting.
Really? It's a very,
they're biomechanically sound.
It is a very, and they're bulletproof.
My son, Owen.
I got a pair sitting right back there.
Yeah, man, I see him.
My son, Owen, he has feet like a pancake. I mean, they're bad, real bad.
Flat feet.
And I had told my wife again and again and again, we have got to get him into this. We got to get him into this. She kept buying him flip-flops like a lot of these mothers do. It's summertime and all that. Well, one afternoon, we were walking down the street after we had found those Nike Air Max. And I said, oh, this is really built very well. Put him in it. He walked and wore them for quite a while, did great. Couldn't find the shoe the next time, and we were at a concert we were getting ready to go to, so I ended up picking something else up for him. And within less than 2 weeks, we were out walking the streets of Robinson, and he was out in front of us, and he actually cranked that shoe over to the point she noticed him doing that. And she's like, oh my God, those things are only 2 weeks old. And I said, I know, it's just not structurally sound. But when he would wear that Nike Air Max, he couldn't roll it over because the heel height works so well with his flat foot. It literally was creating an arch for him. So they're very supportive.
Fascinating. Okay, well, let's get into your boot just as a boot for itself. You guys, your boots are waterproof, but they're leather based. So you mentioned earlier you have a waterproof membrane on the inside.
Yes, we use an event membrane.
How does that hold up?
Holds up very well. Waterproof membranes, it's interesting. If you look at where in Europe, where these membranes are all put together, they're basically all put together in the same facility. Essentially what happens is all the sheet good material gets laid out on the sterile table. It gets stamped out. It gets stitched together. The design of the booty has a lot to do with whether or not a booty's going to last or not. Okay. They get stitched together and they get a seam tape put on there. And then they go to the hemming department where the boot is put together. Okay. It goes to the factory. It gets molded around the foot or around the last. Goes through the final stages. Boom. A boot's been born. Okay. People will ask this question. This is referring to a waterproof membrane. I wore this particular boot, and 99% of the time it's a softer, less supportive boot. They say to themselves, or they say to us, well, I wore this for about a year, and the next year it didn't work anymore. It started to leak.
Because you're pushing on the seams, you start to open it up.
Yes.
Pulling on
The stitching and the materials can only take so much of that pulling before water will finally find a way into it. And then it's compromised. Even Gore-Tex, like I said, they're all kind of coming out of the same facility and whatnot. The difference with Event, and this is a major plus, there's a lot of us out there that do sweat quite a bit.
I'm a sweater.
I am too. I'm a sweat hog. Well, you can take an Event boot, and because it's a dry system, it will not absorb the sweat or moisture. Gore-Tex is considered a wet system. It absorbs it and it's supposed to pass through where air will wick it away into the atmosphere. Problem is it doesn't happen. And everybody knows that wears a Gore-Tex boot, it's clammy the next day, isn't it? Consecutive days of wearing it, it's always kind of damp on the inside. I had an issue with the cuboid in my left foot, and I wore my Elite boot for about, I'm going to say 4 or 5 months straight because it helped my foot. And one morning I was getting up, I put my hand in there just to kind of get everything ready to go. And it just kind of dawned on me that how dry it was on the inside. It was dry.
It really is.
It's a testament, and this is my testament to the waterproofness of it. That boot had been wet a few times in the sense of walking through water and all that. Never got wet on the inside. But when I put my hand in there after all those days of wearing it, it was dry on the inside. So that's the big difference. Event won't hold it in. It does exactly the same thing as Gore-Tex in preventing water from coming in. So that's what we've got in our boots. Why not get the best?
Man, you guys blew my mind right there because visually I understand why boots leak then. Because you're saying the more a boot moves, the more it's going to pull on the seams of this and it opens it up.
Yeah. And that goes into another thing. People select their boots sometimes based on what it looks like, having a combination of synthetic versus leather, that's all well and good. But lightweight isn't always the best. Something really, really lightweight, you're going to have a lot more motion in there. It won't control your foot and ankle quite as well. And quite honestly, because of that, when you're side hilling, carrying a heavy load, your foot and your lower extremity, those peroneal tendons, all those muscles are trying to keep that foot from rolling over. You're going to be more tired at the end of the day wearing something that's lighter, that's not really working for you, rather than having something that just weighs a little bit more, that has more structure to it.
Yeah,
it's a tool. Like you said earlier, a boot is a tool.
Man,
just like the pen is or the bow.
That makes so much sense. What's the reason for one of your boots doesn't have a rubber rand all the way around it versus most of them do? What does that rubber rand around the outside of the boot represent?
Well, the rubber rand on the boot represents keeping the foot on the shank.
Okay.
Okay. You're referring to our Encompass boot, that it doesn't have it going all the way around there.
Correct.
Typically, what that boot is, that is more of a trekking category type of boot. Something that you can do some rolling hills in, a little lighter weight, trails, that sort of thing. Something that for a person that doesn't feel like they really want a over the top mountaineering type of boot, not having that on there allows for a little bit more expansion. Doesn't feel like you've got a real boot on your foot.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Totally.
Yeah. It's a little more comfortable in the sense of possibly every day. Going to feel a little more like a tennis shoe. Though I got a set of Mountain Hunters. I've been wearing these for the last week and a half or so just around here. And I mean, sometimes I feel like, ooh, I like that extra support. But that's what it boils down to.
But that, I wanted to, on that rand does also serve the purpose of protecting that leather, because I had a gentleman, and there are people out there, and we talked about this, they can go buy all these boots and they never have any foot problems. They can wear it. So we have had people buy this Encompass. This Encompass can be utilized in a lot of different terrain. And I would venture to guess that a guy in a pinch could even throw 80 pounds on and come out with it. You got to realize this is the same midsole, same outsole package that we put on all of our boots. The difference is in the shank, the internal shank from the heel to the toe. It's lighter. It does not have the same acrylic coating that we put on all of our other. So you get a little more flex in it. Got absolutely gorgeous nubuck leather on it. And the rubber, it's a polyurethane toe cap, polyurethane heel cap. But we had some guys that were doing guiding some sheep hunts in I want to say Nevada, and the whole season they were doing that. They beat the hell out of the boot, but he said, I never had any issues with it, with the orthotics in place. So I guess the point I want to say is the rand does protect that leather. When you're doing a lot of vertical side hilling, you're going to scratch the snot out of that boot. And, you take that beautiful leather on the boot, I can just see the vertical claw. It looks like a cat had just been clawing the side of his boots. And that's what he told me was going on. So when you're doing a lot of side hilling, you got a heavy pack, especially on that downhill foot. What are you going to do to keep your foot from blowing off the side of the boot?
Yep. Well, that's a great segue right here to boot maintenance, right? And boot break-in. So some boot companies, they say, go on 3 10-mile hikes before you take them on your first hunt. What do you guys recommend for your boots as far as a breakout period? Am I going to be able to buy a pair of boots, put them on, and be like, all right, guys, I'm going to go and I got a bear hunt coming up here in 2 weeks in Idaho, in the mountains of Idaho. And I'm like, all right, am I going to be good to go and take off, or do I have to break them in? And then do you guys recommend like conditioning the leather, or what do you guys do? What do you recommend for your boots?
All right. So the first thing, we ship a set of boots out. You go through a custom boot system. You are going to go through a post fitting. It is to certify that your chart is right and that your fit is spot on. And we've done this work on this chart. Now what you have in your hands, mathematically, everything should line up. That's a thumbs up, right? So if it's a thumbs up, the custom boot system, we would walk through this. This is the level that custom boot system is at. We will talk to them about the lacing, the wear-in process. It's wear-in, not break-in. Break-in is a boot not fitting your foot. You are forcefully making that boot match your foot. You go through a custom boot system. You have purchased a fitted pair of boots with orthotics. Therefore, there shouldn't really be a lot of prominent discomfort associated with a boot in a box. Okay. Because we've done the molding. We've talked with you about your problem, and hopefully our professionalism and experience we've selected the right foundation. Now this whole 50 miles or whoever started that, this is what I say. I'm not sure what James says, but I think this is pretty accurate. I'm not naive enough to feel that there where you're at, everywhere you're walking is going to be where you are when you're hunting. Okay. I get that. But professionally, if I prepare you this way, you're going to put on a new pair of boots that you have never worn before. And we have a platform and an orthotic in there that is going to change the way that you're walking in this mountain boot. I want an hour to an hour and a half the first day, 2 to 2.5, 3 to 3.5, 4 to 4.5, 5 to 5.5. If you wake up in the morning and you're feeling discomfort in your calf after 2.5 hours or your second day, back off a half hour. Don't increase to 3.5. Okay. You're letting that person's body start to adapt to the platform. This is wearing. Now, once they've got to the wear-in process and they've hit 8.5 hours, I don't know about you, but 8.5 hours of wearing a pair of boots, even with a 40-pound pack on, my God, you would think if there was a fit problem, a real problem that was going to really tear you up on a hunt, it would have shown up. Would you agree? I mean,
Yeah.
most likely you're going to be calling Steve and James, that thing's killing my foot. Now, so I'm an 8.5 hour. And the reason I'm saying that is because really some of the elk hunts that I've done, I'm probably boots on my feet. Yeah, I maybe have boots on my feet 12 hours a day. But in that 12 hours, I am probably not walking 12 hours, right? I'm maybe walking 8 hours. So if I get 8 hours of walking in a boot, 8 hours of wear time, we should be good. Then we go into the waterproofing, conditioning of the leather. I try to have guys knock that out after they put several days in these boots, maybe 10 days. Try to stay out of a lot of muck. So that's when you condition it. I'm not saying the boot's stretching, but what you're doing is you're warming that leather, right? The boot is starting to adapt and start to form to your foot because you're taking the time to consciously lace the boot every time, release those laces, lift your foot out the next morning, put it in, go back in, lace that. So as that warms, cools, leather kind of gets pulled open, adhesions get pulled upon, that's the time to go ahead and condition the boot. With someone that doesn't go through the custom process, I have to say it should be very similar. There really shouldn't be.
It either works or it doesn't.
It either is going to work for them or not. And, that's the thing that we try to do. When we're helping someone with a retail purchase like that, there's a level that we have to hit the stop button because they haven't really paid us to spend that much time. But we always encourage people to get your boots, call us up. We ask 2 or 3 questions. Can you wiggle your toes around the toe box? Does it feel overly tight at the ball? Is your heel lifting up much? If so, how much? It's that simple. It's either fitting you or it's not. And if it's not, we either need to help you make an educated guess on either the model that you selected. I noticed that you selected, not us, and or do we need to upgrade to the mapping kit? And, we tried it and it just didn't work. So.
Interesting. How long does a boot last? And that's a relative question because it's all about how much weight you're carrying and how much distance you're traveling and all that. But on standard, if I'm packing out, let's say I do 2 heavy pack outs a year and I'm putting in 5 5-day hunting trips. I mean, mileage you can't necessarily throw out there as like any. How long should I expect the sole to hold up or anything? It's kind of tough. I know a lot of companies will re-sole your boots after a while, but when I'm going through a custom boot system or dropping hundreds of dollars on a boot, how long should I expect it to hold?
Well, just generalized, the boots should be evaluated every year. In fact, we just launched one of our videos on social media last night, I think it was, about evaluating your boots. I mean, you should pull those things out right now, be putting them on, and see if anything's changed. So every year you should evaluate it. I got to be honest with you. I think we built our boots almost too good for some guys, because we had a guide down in New Mexico that guided 3 seasons before he decided to replace the boots. I mean, and he had torn the hell out of the boot, but they were still together, and he had rounded off the sole. So, I would say for the average Joe, maybe you want to 3 years and replace the footbed, a year and a half, somewhere in there, just to make sure. Because I mean, think about it. You've waited, who knows what tags you're going to draw, and you got a trip of a lifetime. It's just added insurance that you're going to protect your feet by putting that footbed in there.
Right. I totally agree. That makes sense. Boots are expensive. Everything's expensive nowadays.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
But
Footwear is very, very expensive. Footwear is not, and I'm not saying anything against it. It's not apparel. It's not pack cloth. It is leather. It's polyurethane in the midsole. It's polyurethane. And there are bits and pieces and components that you have to get. I mean, it's quite orchestrated, man. I mean, it's a big deal.
Guys, I have really enjoyed this episode. I'm learning a ton, and hopefully all the listeners, you can take this and be like, oh my gosh, I understand now. This is why, instead of putting money where your mouth is, you put money where your feet are. How about that? Guys, we got to wrap up this podcast here pretty quickly. Is there any final words that you guys want to share, like you feel like we didn't cover or I missed?
I think we've really gone over a lot of this. The big thing that I would do is, any of the listeners out there, if they've had an opportunity to listen to this, and you know what it's like, Johnny, you get going on this, your mind kind of gets scattered and you forget, you lose focus. If they've got any questions, I guess they can reach out to you on your social media, and you can forward them over to us, or they can send us a private message. We have a staff that monitors that, forwards them directly to James and I. So we'd be happy then to reach out to them, or they can call the office. They can hit my extension. They can hit James's extension. And believe it or not, if they will leave it, give us a day or two, and we will get right back with them and answer that. Take their call.
I love it. James, Stephen, thank you so much for dedicating your time for this podcast. I really appreciate it. Listeners, you guys got to understand that when you feel good, you're going to stay longer and enjoy your trip. And it starts at the foundation. Just like it talks about, I'm a Bible believer, it all starts with the foundation. You put that foundation upon rock or upon sand, and what's going to last longer. And so
you're going to smile more too, aren't you?
Absolutely. So go to lathropandsons.com, LathropandSons. That's lathropandsons.com. Also, make sure the link is in the show notes. Check them out on social media. Dial them up. Have a phone call. They are awesome. Guys, seeing you two together as brothers, it cracks me up. I got one bro. You guys look similar together. I'm like, yeah. The way you interact and looking at each other. James looked at you like, come on, Stephen, what are you talking about, man? I really appreciated it.
You bet.
Guys, go follow them. Check them out. If you're interested in new boots, go check them out. If you're not interested in new boots and you still just want to know more, go through it. I am excited to experience it as well. I learned a lot. Guys, be blessed. Know that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. Freedom on. And as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter Podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com And be sure to follow the podcast, as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.